Hanging in there.
Good.
Yeah. Hi, Tom. Hi, Ben. Hey, Grace.
Hey guys.
Hi, Anika.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Grace Shay.
Hi, Grace. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry I don't have my video on. I'm sitting in bed with a heating pad on my back.
Oh, are you not feeling well?
I did something a day and a half ago, and this is
Oh.
the best position for now.
Oh, gosh. Well, isn't it nice you can be at this meeting like that?
I know.
There are some bennies.
There really are. There really are.
Oh.
I'll take it.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the final working group meeting. I see that we have 20 of the working group members here, so we have 5 more to go. So I'll give everyone a few more minutes before we officially start.
Hi, Jeff.
Is that Elaine?
Sandy.
Sandy, where are you? Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm trying to find you on the. Oh, I see. There you are.
I'm
I'll
just
say
a
hi to Elaine
name.
as well. I'll say hello to Michael.
Hello, Jeff. Good
Hello,
to see
Mike.
you.
Good evening.
Yeah. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Sandy, how come we never see you? You're always blacked out here.
I'm not actually. I don't on this computer. I don't have a camera, so I'm just a name.
More than that.
And a voice.
Hey, Richard.
Hey. Had a little trouble finding the link.
Uh-oh. Hey, Annie. Hey, Bill. Matt, I think we have almost everybody.
I see 22 working group members, so we're 3 short. I think we can maybe get started, and then hopefully they will join in the next few minutes, or certainly before we vote.
I know Paul was going to be late.
Right.
Ah, okay.
All right, well, let's get started then. So again, welcome everyone to the final working group on renaming Lee Highway meeting. It's been a long road. We started back in early September, and here we are. We're getting ready to take the final vote and see what the preferred name and the 4 alternative names are going to be. So with that said, I'm going to dive into the presentation. We have a fair amount to do tonight and a fair amount to go over, so let's get started. Next slide. All right, so the agenda, I just gave you a quick welcome. We're going to adopt the minutes. I'm going to talk about how we're going to report this to the LHA board tomorrow morning when we meet the LHA board of directors meeting. And we'll go through staff responses to the working group and advisory group questions.
It's really not about anything. It's really because I have so much. I'm on 6 boards. I have 2 kids. I'm like, I got 3 businesses. I got 75.
Lauren,
I'm busy. So it's really not about time.
Lauren, I think you're not on mute.
Sorry.
But we hear you.
That's really embarrassing, guys.
That was good. That was really fun.
We are right
there with you, I am so sorry.
No. I think you spoke for many of us. You spoke for many of us.
Yeah.
You are preaching. I was telling someone that I was running late for this meeting, and I was like, I gotta go. I have all these things I gotta do. I'm so sorry, y'all.
You are preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the choir.
All right, yeah, I agree with you, Lauren. We're all very busy and have too many things going on. So go back to the agenda. We'll go over the staff responses to the working group and advisory group questions, particularly about names and how they would be shown on street signs and things like that. And we distributed that information to you earlier, but we'll go over that again. We will review the top 10 names and justifications. They will discuss the top 10 names, and by that I mean I will go and have each and every working group member spend up to 2 minutes talking about their favorite names and why we should vote for them. Then we will use ranked choice voting to conduct the final vote. Thank you, all of you, for taking the test vote yesterday to see how it works. I'll briefly go over how this vote's going to go once we get there, but it's going to be exactly the same as it was last night. Then I'll show you the results. Then we will go through the road typology discussion and figure out the appropriate road typology for each of the 5 final names that we choose. And then we'll adjourn and we'll be done. Next slide. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all you've done so far to get us to where we are today. And thank you to everyone who's joined us on this video as well. I think I see a few more guest participants than we've seen before, so thank you for being here. As we've done in every other board meeting, we need to adopt the minutes from the last meeting. We sent out the draft minutes earlier today, so I would ask someone that they move that we adopt the meeting minutes from the December 2nd working group board meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we adopt the minutes. Next slide. All right, so just to remind everyone, we are here to fulfill the working group's charge. The advocacy process the Lee Highway Alliance board began on June 9th, 2020, began with a letter to the county board, is wrapping up after nearly 6 months of work. The working group has met with the desired outcomes of the Lehigh LHA strategy. I'm also getting a little bit of feedback, so if you're not talking, please put yourself on mute. The working group has met the desired outcomes of LHA strategy, including creating a shared identity for the corridor and reaching thousands of stakeholders and Lee Highway residents, property and business owners, and institutions. The working group is about to achieve a final step as we recommend 1 preferred name and then 4 alternative names to the LHA board, who's meeting again tomorrow morning. The names will effectively brand for the future vision of the roadway and reflect the criteria as well as community and business input. Next slide. All right, so staff responses to working group and advisory group questions. The first one was, does the county or VDOT require a certain typology in terms of street naming? For example, highway, avenue, street, road, etc. And are there limitations on this typology? And the answer from VDOT and county was no. The naming typology is usually a local authority and is distinct from functional classification. For example, Lee Highway is a principal arterial, but so too are Glebe Road and Wilson Boulevard. There's no law or regulation at the state level that governs what type of typology is used, and per an earlier response from VDOT, certain suffixes are more commonly used with certain road types, street, lane for local streets, and parkway, boulevard for arterials, for example. So the upshot of that is there's no legal requirements or guidance for the road typology we end up choosing tonight for the final 5 names. Next slide. Second question is, what are the costs of installation? So the county and VDOT don't believe that sign costs should be a material consideration for the working group. County staff will need to conduct a more thorough evaluation once a name or names are selected and prior to final action by the county board to inform them on estimated costs. Staff is currently working on refining these costs, but does not have an estimate to provide at this time. Next slide. Finally, is there a prescribed or recommended character limit for road names? And yes, due to limitations on sign sizes, fonts, existing infrastructure, and capacity, county staff is recommending that street names should not exceed 15 characters in length, for example, no longer than Washington Boulevard, including spaces between words. The 15 character limit will allow for use of standard size signs in most locations. There are several locations at which VDOT may need to replace the entire sign structure due to the anticipated increase in length from Lee Highway. The upshot there is for some of the names we're considering, specifically the names that have a person's name on it, I think we can say with near certainty that the full name would not be on the street signs. Next slide. So I think I'll pause there if you guys have any questions, since that was quite substantive. So I can't see you, but if you have any questions, raise your hand and Maya will call on you. All right, hearing none. So just a reminder, we're voting tonight on the final 10 names. These names are Dogwood, Dr. Edward Morton, Ella Baker, Greenway, James E. Brown, John Glenn, John M. Langston, Justice, Main Street, and Mildred and Richard Loving. Next slide. All right, so bear with me. As you all saw, we put together justifications for each of these names, and the justifications were drafted in some combination by working group members, some were based on some additional information from county staff, and then just additional research we've been able to do. So the whole point of this is just to remind everyone how these names got here and why we're voting on them tonight. So the first one is Dogwood. The Dogwood tree is the state tree for the Commonwealth of Virginia. The social studies curriculum taught to every 4th grade student that goes through public school in Virginia includes the Dogwood tree. Next slide. Ella Baker. Ella Josephine Baker, also known as the mother of the modern civil rights movement, is a native daughter of Virginia born in Norfolk on December 13, 1903. She was a civil rights pioneer who championed the ordinary citizen. Her expert organizational skills were instrumental in bridging the generations of leadership in the civil rights movement, including her work with the NAACP, Southern Christian Leadership Council, and Student Nonviolent Conference Committee. Her contributions have had lasting impacts, including on the Voting Rights Act of 1964 and 1965. The historic freedom rides are a testament to her legacy. The fingerprints of her leadership can be seen in the social movements of today. Next slide. Dr. Edward Morton, the first Black physician in North Arlington, was a powerful early voice for racial equity in Arlington, and specifically on Lee Highway. His home and medical practice were located at 4842 Lee Highway, the site that's currently the McDonald's restaurant. Changes to zoning regulations forced Black landowners on Lee Highway, including Dr. Morton, to sell their homes when those blocks of Lee Highway were rezoned. Dr. Morton was a leader in the Halls Hills neighborhood and was a candidate for county board in the 1930s. Dr. Morton promoted Black empowerment and studied the writings of Marcus Garvey. Dr. Morton believed in the power of education, and his 2 daughters attended each historically Black colleges and universities, one becoming a teacher at the segregated Langston Elementary School and the other a nurse. Next slide. Greenway. So envision the Lee Highway corridor as it could be in the future, a greenway bordered by trees and plants and full of sustainable, environmentally friendly features. That is how the LHA guiding principles envision this important roadway. Greenway could benefit transportation as well as surrounding communities through enhanced public health and urban planning. Its innovative designs would combine transportation functionality with ecological sustainability. Next slide. James E. Brown. Reverend James E. Brown, a president of the Arlington branch of the NAACP, oversaw the integration of Arlington public schools during his tenure. His leadership within the Halls Hill community demonstrates his deep connection to Lee Highway. Not only did he reside on Culpeper Street next to Langston School, he served as the president of the John M. Langston Civic Association, as a member of the Arlington Lunch Counter Protest, and as a minister and assistant pastor of the Mount Salvation Baptist Church. His wife Hazel was the manager of the lunchroom at segregated Langston School and worked in the Arlington Negro Recreation section. Next slide. Senator John Glenn, a longtime Arlington resident, exemplifies the value of courage, discovery, a respect for science, and public service. He was one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts selected by NASA to lead the United States in manned missions in space. On February 20th, 1962, Colonel Glenn flew the Friendship 7 space capsule in the 3-orbit mission around the Earth, a major milestone in the nascent space program. At the time of the historic space mission, Colonel Glenn and his family lived and owned a house on Harrison Street. Next slide. John M. Langston. John N. Langston was an American abolitionist, attorney, educator, activist, diplomat, and politician who was the first Black person elected to Congress from Virginia. His ties to Arlington date back to 1867 when he was the Inspector General of the Freedmen's Bureau and the managing agency of the Freedmen's Village, the contraband camp for the formerly enslaved in Arlington. He founded the law department at Howard University, was its first dean, and the first president of Virginia State University. Lee Highway runs right past the old segregated John N. Langston Elementary School. The 4 students who desegregated Arlington Public School students attended Langston School. His nephew was the poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist Langston Hughes. Next slide. Justice. Justice is the bedrock in which our community and our society rests. Justice represents the principles and ideals of the founders. As a civic virtue, justice is a powerful reminder that everyone is treated equally. Arlington aspires to create a more just community in all of its dimensions. Next slide. Main Street. The Lee Highway Alliance and Plain Lee Highway practice what urban planning calls the Main Street approach to revitalization. It is based on transformative strategies of design, promotion, and organization to arrive at economic vitality and enhance quality of life. The goal is to bring communities together through community-based grassroots planning, support local businesses, and always remember our history and identity through heritage-based education. Main Street represents the diversity that makes the 4.6-mile corridor unique, yet linked through 14 established communities. Next slide. Mildred and Richard Loving. The name Mildred and Richard Loving would commemorate a powerful story about an interracial couple who fought for the right to be married in the landmark Supreme Court case of Loving versus Virginia. It recalls the unjust elements of the past and the triumphs of love over injustice. Their story changed and continues to change our nation. It was cited as precedent in establishing the right to marry for gay couples. I think it was just 2 years ago when that happened. 4 years ago. When people cross Key Bridge in Virginia from DC, they are greeted by our state logo, Virginia's for Lovers. It would be fitting if the first road they come to bears the Loving's name. The name works on an intellectual level by commemorating history, on an aspirational level by honoring our motto, Virginia's for Lovers, and on an emotional level by signaling our desire to treat each other in a loving way. It is a simple and unifying message. Next slide. All right, so I'm done talking. Thank you for your patience. With that, I want to hear from you guys. So,
can I just make a couple of quick notes? There's just a few little things. If any of these biographies are going on to the county board, for Ella Baker, the biography called SNCC, the Student Non-Violating Conference Committee, it's the coordinating committee. So that was not quite correct. And for what it's worth, when John Glenn orbited the Earth, he was still the rank of major. He was promoted to colonel in 1965, right before he retired from the Marines. So just in terms of keeping those things accurate, if we go to the county board with those names.
Thanks, Jim. And that's a helpful reminder because the goal is once we select our preferred name and 4 alternatives, we'll refine these. And when we present to the county board on the 15th, we'll make sure that it's been double checked and scrubbed and ready to go.
I also, sorry, could I just have one small editorial thing, but I think it's important on the Loving. At one point I referred to the right to marry for gay couples. Could we change that to the right to marry for same-sex couples? I think that's how the court case referred to it, and I think that's a better way to refer to it. It's a small change, but it might be sensitive to some people.
All right, thank you. All right, unless there's anything else, I'm going to start calling on people, and what I'd like you to do.
Matt, I have a quick question or comment. First of all, I really appreciate all the work that went into doing the research and all this, but I'm wondering if there was any work towards any due diligence on any of the names to discover any sort of derogatory information. I would be concerned if we finish the process and we learn something that we don't already know.
Sure, Ginger, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So we've met with county historic staff to discuss how we will vet obviously the final names, and their preference was to do a thorough search after the 5 names. There's just too many names for them to do a thorough research on. And with the library closed, it was going to be just sort of fairly difficult to do some of the research. So the county staff has agreed to do a more thorough, to work with us on the final 5 names, to do before the final name is selected. So while we did all of the research that we could, there will be another final look at the names prior to the county board.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I do think it's important, though. We wouldn't want to choose a name that we find something out, some skeleton in somebody's closet that is not good.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And actually, that's quite relevant today. I don't know if you all saw the Johns Hopkins story, where Johns Hopkins apparently owned 5 slaves back in 1850. We just found that out today. So important to know that. Okay, well, hearing all that, I think I'm ready to go on. And
I was raising my hand.
Yeah, me too.
And Matt, I appreciate like you're rolling along. I just wanted to note back to the minutes that I sent through some edits. So if those could be noted.
I received, I'll fix it, Anika. I've received those.
Thank you. And then 2, just again, wanting to, on the line of like our information, I know a lot of the information is like widely available in terms of like maybe John Langston or John Glenn and so on. I was just curious about the justice definition or paragraph, and for me, focusing on the principles and ideas of the founders, we could just do a lot more with justice than that. And so I just think I want to co-sign with the point of just making sure that and I appreciate the great work that those who participated in this process did, but that was just the one that stood out for me, where I feel like we could say a lot about justice.
And I think just going back to almost the dictionary definition of justice might be a good way to go, rather than referring back to the founding fathers, that type thing.
okay, was there anyone else?
Yeah, Matt, it's Jeff. I also have some editorial questions. I'm happy to take them offline. Just as an example, some seem a little unbalanced. Where like with Ella Baker, we sort of talk in general, but it's not specific. And so if I didn't know and I read through it, I'd almost be biased against that name because it doesn't really go into specificity as much as the others. There's some other areas where James Brown, we might add sort of years that he was active. But again, I know we're trying to move along, so I'm happy to work with you or Ginger offline with some recommendations.
Yeah, so maybe the way to handle this is once we pick the 5 names and before we go to the county board and have fully scrubbed and finalized the justifications, we will list all of your help on getting the final drafts done. And certainly we all want to make these as accurate and as effective as possible. So I would just ask, once we're done tonight, we have the final 5, you all work with us to make sure the final justifications are pitch perfect. All right?
I got a quick one, Matt, thank you. And it's about the Loving name, given what we've learned now about the limit on the number of characters on the signs. How is that going to affect our consideration of that name? Does that immediately disqualify including Richard and Mildred, or is that just about how it will appear on certain signs in certain areas?
Yeah, so I think where we landed on that last time was, we're going to submit the recommendation for the formal name, whatever the formal name is the county board would adopt. Recognizing the reality that there's limited real estate on street signs. And as we got feedback from staff, they really see a 15 character max on the street sign. So there's no way you can get Richard and Mildred Loving, Boulevard, Avenue, whatever, on all one sign. That's just not going to happen. But whenever we submit this to the board, and then whenever the board takes action on it, I think what we're voting on is the official full name, which would be, in the case of Loving's, Richard and Mildred Loving, or James E. Brown, or whatever. So I don't think you'd see Richard and Mildred Loving on the sign. All right, anybody else?
May I mention the issue of Loving? We only have Lee on Lee Highway, and through a lot of effort and time, it's shown up as the Lee that is on there. And so I think that if that were chosen, we would know in time exactly who it was named after. I just don't see that as a huge issue. I'd also like to bring up the thought about Ella Baker. When you stop and read about her in this outline, I got to thinking today about John Lewis, who recently passed away, and Martin Luther King, and a man named C.T. Vivian, who was the field general of Martin Luther King. And I wonder if we are to honor her, who, yes, was born in Norfolk, but grew up in North Carolina and spent her adult life in New York City. I wonder if we should not consider some of these other greats in the civil rights movement. If we go to James Brown, as I was counseled, it's the godfather of soul, not, but I wonder how many people, if I look at the other folks on this list, I just don't see him floating up as some state or national figure. He is more of an Arlington or more of a Langston figure, I think. And then when we go to Mr. Langston,
Hey, Bill, sorry to interrupt, but what we're doing next on the agenda is everyone will talk about the names. So if you don't mind, I'll call on you in just a few minutes and you can talk about the names. I just want to, if you don't mind, that'd be helpful.
Matt, if I could just say something in response to a couple of questions that have been raised about the name Loving, which is that first, there is on the chat the proposal that it could be M and R Loving instead of the full name. But I also did want to say that I wasn't exactly clear on what you were saying about the county. I think that what I read is that they're recommending that the name be less than 15 characters in order to make it easier for them. They are not saying that if it was longer than that, they could not do the signs. And in fact, a very quick perusal of road names in Arlington right now, several of them have more than 15 characters, and Arlington County has managed to put them on street signs, from Arlington Ridge Road, Nellie Custis Drive, Army and Navy, of course, George Washington Memorial Parkway. So it wasn't clear to me that they were saying you cannot have more than 15 characters, whether they were saying, please make life a bit easier for us by making it 15 characters, or even whether they were saying if it is more than 15 characters, we cannot deal with it. I mean, there's Jefferson Davis Highway, for example, that we had to deal with for many years, and it was much longer than that. And something rubs me the wrong way about us being able to accommodate Jefferson Davis Highway on our street signs, but not accommodate Mildred and Richard Loving. So I just wanted to put that in here. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I think
that's all I say on the topic.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I think
You're here. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this all illustrates, it's going to be in the county and VDOT's hands, ultimately, what this looks like, right? We send them the name, they're going to decide what's going to look like on the street sign. And that's the feedback they've given us so far. So.
But I think we should say this, we should make Minnie's point to the county so that they don't forget that they allow these other long names.
Right, and I'm not sure they're saying we don't allow. I think saying we recommend is a little bit different from saying we don't allow. And saying we recommend, we can also say we hear your recommendation, but it was important to us to have a longer name, which is, I think, less combative by saying you won't allow it, but we insist.
All right, well, in the interest of keeping things moving, again, we have to vote on the road typologies once we choose the names. And I think that'll be an appropriate place to have this discussion when we decide what type of typology will go with these names. So I suggest we keep moving because we have to vote and we still have some other things to do. So we have any other comments before I have you all start talking about the names?
So I have one other comment, which is that there's more than one place that this isn't just going to show up on the little white street signs at the intersection of small side streets. This name is also going to show up on Interstate 66 at 2 exits because Lee Highway crosses 66 both at exit 69 and exit 72, and actually exit 73 exits onto Lee Highway as well. So those big giant green signs on I-66 could certainly have room for a big name.
Yep, good point. I agree. All right, I'm going to start this off by calling on Andy Rood. Andy, you want to go ahead and give us your thoughts on the names?
Yeah, first off, well, I'm leaning toward Main Street as my #1 choice. It's not a terribly exciting or sexy name, but I think of the 10 names which have been presented, it's the name which has the best connotation for a sense of place. I think it implies something of a small town and a neighborhood, as well as making Lee Highway more of a destination as opposed to basically a highway they want to get through as quickly as possible. So that's my #1 choice. And I do like the name of Loving. I particularly like the flow of that and what it means as a unifying name. But I think it would be appropriate to have both names on the sign, if at all possible. So those are my comments.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Bill, I'll kick it back to you if you want to talk about your favorite names and thoughts on other names.
I knew you were going to harass me like that. The other thought is, we had a discussion a couple of meetings ago about whether or not to leave John M. Langston on the list or not, because we have the senior center, we have the Civic Association named after him, and we took off Dr. Drew because of the elementary school. And I just felt like there was some inconsistency there, particularly because Dr. Drew is so incredibly famous and did so much for medicine and for warfare to protect our troops. The second thought is to go into the idea of how I'm thinking. And I looked at the results of the 1,500 people. And I was taken by the fact that #1 by far was the Loving name. And then we go down to Main Street and Dogwood and Glen, Greenway and Justice. And it seems like I don't mean to say no to the person that just preceded me, but it looks like, and from our discussions in the past, that Loving certainly is one of the major names that we have on this list. And I would strongly hope that we coalesce around that as #1.
All right, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Next person, Jeff Joseph.
Thanks. I said you have to mute. Thank you, Matt. So first, thanks again for all the hard work of everyone. As we talked last week, it's been a great experience. I am a fan of an iteration of the Loving. In fact, to be fully clear, the full name. One of the goals of this group, or this came in large part as a response to what many find to be an offensive name currently being used, and what a strong statement to come back with something that isn't just generic. I mean, Main Street is a great name, Justice and others are great names, but to really make a statement, and to make a statement for history that we reject many of the things that are associated with the current name and embrace the hope, the standard setting, the opportunities that that were created by the bravery and courage of the Lovings. I think it's a name that can be seen with pride, not only in Arlington, but throughout the state and around the country and around the world. Provides an opportunity for education, for educating people about the name and what these people did and why it's important. And reminder that the struggle never ends, that the struggle for justice and equality for all never ends. There's just so many, it's so powerful, particularly when you know the story. I think there are many other great names here. I have no issue with honoring John Langston again, but it'd be nice to, as someone has pointed out in many meetings, it'd be great to have a name that actually honors a woman, so that fits under the Loving. So that's definitely my first choice, and Langston behind that. But just the power that comes with making a statement that we're moving from Robert E. Lee and the symbolism there to Mildred and Richard Loving is not only such a great statement for now, I think it just carries on in perpetuity.
Thank you, Jeff. Annie Moyer?
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for all this incredible work. I could just say everything Jeff just said. I mean, I could stop there. Maybe I should, but I'll just say that I think that the Loving name hits every single point on our list of criteria. I think far and away it is the strongest name. It's relevant to place, it's relevant to the reparative potential of history and future. It's representative symbolically for several groups of traditionally underserved communities, if you include women in that, but also people of color and the LGBTQ community. And it's highly brandable. There's so much you can do with it, as we've already done when we did our Loving Local event for Small Business Saturday. So that's what I'll say.
Well, thank you, Annie. Lynn Coates.
Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, here I am. Sorry. Yes, first of all, I'd like to commend everybody for this wonderful work that we've done. All of the names are just amazing. I just think that the Loving is my #1 choice, just to echo, or just to, I'm not even going to repeat what Annie said. I agree with Annie and Bill and just everyone regarding the symbolism of the Loving name. I don't mind how long it is. I think that is doable. I also like Ella Baker. And I do agree with you, Jeff, in terms of the generalization, in terms of the description, the justification. There was so much to try to compact in 4 to 5 sentences for a lifelong work of what she has done, which we are experiencing today, of the grassroots organizing that she has done. We have, from, thinking about the freedom rides that she mentored young emerging leaders such as John Lewis, Diane Nash, Julian Bond, Stokely Carmichael. So she, to me, in the year of the centennial of the 19th Amendment for the women's right to vote, I think it's powerful to have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's powerful to have Ella Baker, who was such an advocate of and a proponent of champion the ordinary citizen, no matter who you were, to empowering them, the democratic process. I think she would be a great consideration for the power of the vote, the power of our democracy, our democratic values, and what we've done today. I mean, what we've done with this whole renaming the highway process is exactly what she was about. So,
thank you, Lynn. Grace Shea.
Sorry there. there's really, I feel like everything's been said. It's really been such an interesting process to go through this with everyone, and I appreciate everyone's time and commitment. And I do agree with loving, and I think the whole name really tells the story, but I do agree that the story can be told also behind the scenes, and it will come through, you know, if it's not an option. So I think we can work with that.
Thanks, Grace. Jim Todd?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad I'm not the first person to speak because you were all so much more eloquent than me. I first just want to say that this process is so amazing that actually any one of these 10 names would be a delightful replacement for the horrible first name and horrible street descriptor that we have now. I too am a huge fan of Mildred and Richard Loving and Ella Baker. I will use the rest of my time just to point out that in Arlington we have Patrick Henry Drive, John Marshall Drive, George Mason Drive, Nellie Custis Drive. Someone pointed out we used to have Jefferson Davis Highway, Walter Reed Drive, and of course the mouthful of a name, Arlington Ridge Road. So I have no concerns about the length, and I also don't think it's the end of the world if some signs at bigger intersections, for 5 Points, by the way, also has bigger green signs for the name of the roads there. And I think other big intersections do as well, or could, like 5 Points does. And then of course, as I mentioned before, I-66 has plenty of room for the name, so that if we then use this just Loving Street on some of the smaller side street intersections, I don't think it's the end of the world. I also just will remind everyone that you know, we still have to rename what we call Old Lee Highway, and I love all of these names for Old Lee Highway. And so if one of these names doesn't get used, I think that we have nine great names to suggest for Old Lee Highway. And you know, maybe that's when we could select Ella Baker if it doesn't win out tonight, or John Langston, or James Brown, or somebody like that. And you've all been so wonderful and so good at listening, and you've taught me so much, and you've made me rethink what I thought I knew so many times. And I wish every other process in Arlington was as good as this one.
Thank you, Jim. Sandra Green.
Whoa, let me cut this phone off. I'm sorry. First of all, Matt, I'd like to thank you for your leadership, and it has been really a real positive experience being a part of this whole process. My first choice, of course, is John M. Langston, because of the significance that it has in the lives of so many generations of African-American children who grew up on the Lee Highway corridor and in that area. I think that John M. Langston really tells the story. It includes the dark side of the history of Arlington County, right on up until the brightest side, when the 4 students who went to Langston were the first 4 students to integrate the schools in the state of Virginia. So I think it tells the whole story of how Arlington has evolved. My second choice is Loving's for all the reasons that people have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Richard Price.
Sorry, having trouble finding the buttons to turn on the mic and the video. I also want to say thank you to everybody. This has been an enormously, I think, successful process that we followed, and I'm very proud of everyone on this Zoom meeting or a part of this working group. I think it's a great, this is fantastic. You know, everyone pat themselves on the back. I applaud everybody. We all did a great job. I looked at this initiative and thought, how do we write a significant wrong in history. It was a mistake. I mean, a group of men, it is no secret, got together and tried to plant Robert E. Lee's name on major thoroughfares from here all the way out to the West Coast. Supporters of the Confederacy. And frankly, I think what we're doing right now is taking that wrong movement and turning it right. We're righting the wrongs of history. I look to the names of history to help us in this endeavor. And if I had to pick a top 5, I would start, and again, I've seen in the chats, it needs to be the full name. There's no M&R, Loving, whatever. It's got to be Mildred and Richard Loving, or John Langston, or Edward T. Morton, even Doctor. I would even put Doctor in there because of the significance of that. But if I had to pick an order, it would be, and I'll give my top 5, Loving, Langston. I'm going to go with just last names: Loving, Langston, Morton, Baker. And frankly, if Maryland can have Democracy Boulevard, we can have Justice Avenue. And thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
No problem. Thank you, Richard. Let's go with Mike Cantwell.
Thank you, Matt, and everyone else. I'm just going to list the few that I liked. I've kind of gone back and forth in the order, but my first choice is Loving, my second choice is Main Street, and my third choice is Unity. As I wrote in the chat, I'm mildly opposed to having the long name on all street signs. I think it would be a little bit unwieldy, but that's not my main reason for opposing the long name. I think the story is of love, it's of marriage, it's of family, and it's about, not them being individuals, but them being united in their marriage. So that's one of the reasons I really support having just the last name. Main Street is a great name for what the Lee Highway Alliance is trying to do. And Unity, I just think this country needs a lot more unity and a lot more love and togetherness. So I think that's a good name also. So thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, Mike. Let's go with Julia Spain.
Well, hello and thank you, Mike. Hello, colleagues. It's been a phenomenal process. I would say there was a bit of skepticism on my part initially as we took this path, but I'm so happy of the input and the teamwork and efforts that everyone has put forth in this process. So, I'm the head of the NAACP, and all 10 of these names are phenomenal. But at the end of the day, there was significant triumph in the Mildred Loving case that correlates directly with civil rights. And of course, what we've heard here tonight, just an amazing story. So that is my number one choice. I think it needs to be the full name. I also believe if Fairfax can have Justice High School, we can have Justice Boulevard. I do like Justice. There's a lot of positives to that. And I have a few others, but Mildred and Richard Loving by far is my number one choice.
Thank you, Julius. Mike Hogan.
Thanks, Matt. When I think about names, we have the people, we have the concepts, and they're all important and variably brandable. When I think about the people names, I think about those who have achieved nation-changing achievements. And I think there are 4 of them here that are Ella Baker, John Glenn, John Langston, and Mildred and Richard Loving. Ella Baker and John Glenn would fit in a 15-character sign, so that may be helpful. And then I think about, Main Street is certainly brandable. It says something to people who are not from here, and it sort of conveys a sense of place. I like the concepts of justice as a name, and I think that that is something that says something about us if we name streets that. But overall, I think my favorite is Mildred and Richard Loving, and I'm not hung up on whether the full names are used or not. I think we should recommend full names. I think, the future is largely digital. People in the future will not really look at the street sign so much as they look at their phone or their navigator in their car to see the name. And so a longer name can fit on those formats. So, but I picture a child in the back seat of a car who looks out the street sign and says, Loving Lane or Loving Parkway or whatever. What's that mean, Mommy? And she gets to explain to him or her what it means and who these people were. And I think that's an opportunity for education in every family that travels down the road that we should not miss. And, the branding opportunities are there. Even if it just says Loving, that says something as well. So, that's my first choice for all of those reasons. And I think, it doesn't really matter to me whether the 15 characters or longer is on the sign.
Sorry, I got booted there for a second. Wilma Jones.
Hi, I also want to thank everyone for everyone's time and effort on this project. It's been a very nice project to be a part of. I'm going to go ahead and echo Sandra in regard to my first choice being John M. Langston. And I do want to just say in terms of the whole Virginia focus, that because of his importance to the whole state, I think that it would be a name that some of the other localities that this county board wants to get, as a part of this would be open to. My second choice would be Dr. Morton, and my third choice would be Loving. And that's it.
Thank you, Wilma. How about Sandy Chesrown?
Hi. It's been 3.5 years since Ginger Brown and I requested a name change for both Lee and Highway, so we're very happy to be here tonight. I also want to thank Katie Crystal, LHA's board liaison, for agreeing to support this community-based effort. And I want to thank the LHA board for providing a lot of board members and really very good professional staff time from Ginger and Maya so that they can involve you and thousands of other stakeholders. My number one preferred name is Loving Avenue. The Loving Supreme Court case literally changed the US, as you all know. I think it can become a new shared identity that will effectively brand the corridor and the Loving Alliance. And my rationale is as follows. As Kim Keenan, former general counsel for the NAACP, said, the 1967 decision in Loving versus Virginia changed the face of America. It brought an end to the separate, unequal, but legally sanctioned way of life in America. It fueled the rise of multiracial families, and it supported the June 2015 ruling that legalized same-sex marriage. So to me, the name Loving has both Virginia and national importance, and it encompasses justice. Number two, the results of the combined public and student polling gave Loving the number one position at 1,131 votes. That was close to 1/3 of the 3,500 votes cast. Number three, all 4 of our advisory groups supported the name as providing the corridor with better placemaking. They talked about the importance of history, the story, the name not being hard to pronounce, not too long, and providing a sense of place. Number 4, the county staff is recommending that the new roadway name not exceed 15 characters and spaces. And I think Loving Avenue would be perfect at 13 characters and spaces. It would also be great for art on the avenue if we called it Loving Avenue, and Loving Local, as Annie mentioned earlier. So in summary, whether the names go to the CTB or the General Assembly, a name like Loving Avenue can link all 14 communities, it can link us to other regional jurisdictions, and it can support our Main Street planning under Plan Lee Highway. Other names that I would probably be happy with are John M. Langston Boulevard, Main Street, Greenway, Edward T. Morton, and Justice. I would not be happy with Dogwood, and I hope that we don't encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Tom Wolf.
Thanks, Matt. And I commend my colleagues in the working group for everybody's valuable time and input. I'm not sure, but if pressed, I guess I would vote for Main Street. And regardless of what the final outcome is, I just very much hope that I'm going to be able to remember the new name every time I have to write down my address. I yield back the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Paul Holland.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I also want to just say thank you to everyone for what has really been a very enlightening process. I too have learned so much from folks I knew and folks that I didn't know coming into this. So thank you for that. As chair of the Plan Lee Highway process, we're creating a 30-year plan for the future of the corridor, and it's a great opportunity to move on from the past and have a new day, a new 3 decades for this corridor. So with that in mind, I very much appreciate the comments on Loving. I think I've actually had my mind changed as to why I think that should be the first choice moving forward. I also, though, strongly support Langston and Main Street. I think both those names have, Langston, I think, as we heard from both Sandra and Wilma, the connection to a community in Arlington is very profound and strong, and I think creates a great reason for having that be the name. Main Street, I think we all know the branding opportunities that could bring. And finally, rounding out, I guess, my top 5 would be Greenway and Justice. I think both names that look forward to a new future in Arlington. Thanks again for the opportunity to be a part of this great working group.
Thanks, Paul. Lauren Harris.
Sorry again, guys, for my icebreaker earlier. Sorry. Okay. So embarrassing. All right. I think that my first, the name I like the most, I think, is Loving. I still kind of tweedle back between Loving and John M. Langston. And then I have a strong third at Dr. Edward Morton. But that's kind of the way that goes. And you've heard enough of my voice today. So I'm going to go back on mute and yield my time.
Thanks, Lauren. Anika?
Good evening, everyone. Want to echo and thank Matt for leadership, the Highway Alliance for coordination, and I don't know exactly who and how we were all selected, but I feel honored to be in this group, to be a part of a really collaborative group and representative group. My first choice is Mildred and Richard Loving. And I think it was Sandy, when Sandy called the currently known Lee Highway Alliance Loving Alliance, it made me smile. And Lauren just smiled. There's an emotive, like there's a visceral reaction to that name, and it gives me chills. I want to say, as a queer woman, when marriage equality passed, I sat at my desk at work and cried, and knowing that you know, that this case was associated with that. It's really thrilling for me. I wanted to note, as an arts manager and chair of the Arlington Commission for the Arts, placemaking, and through that, you know, having some oversight to the Public Art Committee, you know, placemaking is essential. And I think that I don't want to undermine anyone's choice, but placemaking has to do with drawing on local community assets to build aspiration, or local communities' desire towards aspiration and change and potential. There's just one name in particular that out of the 10 that just don't do that. And I know that we didn't spend these weeks to recommend, you know, a name that doesn't do that. And so Loving just has that reaction. And I think 3 weeks ago, or however long it was before we got to the point of the community polling, I felt really strongly that we should align with the community, because I live in South Arlington. I don't have to write my name. I don't have to write that as my address, whatever we come up with. But community for me is truly central. And so I know there was a response to that. And I think I was having to grapple with, what if the community isn't bought in to Loving or Langston, or, you know, all the others that are on my top 5? What will we do? How will we use our power in that moment? And so here we are, where across the board, Loving has come up. When I mention it to people, it draws a smile. And so I think that is the kind of sort of legacy to this project that we want to be able to leave. And then 2, what also gives me chills is thinking about how we have an opportunity to set a precedent for all the other Lee Highway, Lee fill in the blanks, Lee names, Robert E. Lee names that are going to change over the years, and that we are going to be in the history books as having set, hopefully, from my point of view, Loving, Mildred and Richard Loving, as the new name for this jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Keeney.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, group. This has been a very educational process. As I think I mentioned before, love everything that's coming out of this. My favorite, hands down, is Loving, with the full name, Richard and Mildred Loving. And I think that it's important to recognize it's actually technically 2 names. They are a couple and they're a family. And I think that throughout the group, a lot of people have a lot of interest in that name, something I think a lot of people could be passionate about, and clearly throughout all the votes and information we saw publicly, that appears to be the case. It's interesting to me that one of the biggest concerns about going with the Loving family as the name for Lee Highway is that people think that it's a little bit long. And it was kind of interesting that, like, the challenge with the beauty of the Loving family trickles into every detail of every conversation, because, you know, what if we like something so much but we don't pursue it because the rules might be broken, or we might have a street sign that's too long. I mean, to me that's actually, like, poetic in a way. So I think that's hands down my favorite. I also really like Baker, Dr. Morton, Langston. I think the bottom of the list is Dogwood for me. I feel like that's a little bit suburban. It doesn't really sound right, and it's a tree that's not going to really survive, or it's not going to be lining the highway. It's just kind of a little bit out there. I mean, it's cute, but that's about it. And I think we need to achieve for something much higher. So with that said, I think Loving gets my vote all day long. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thanks, Ben. Elaine Furlow.
Hi, everybody. As I was looking through the list one last time, I sort of divided the names into 2 batches. One, names of people, and then the other group that were ideals or something else. Remembering that the county board was interested in having at least one in that category in terms of talking to other jurisdictions and so forth. So in that batch, the word Greenway was appealing to me. And I do think of it as one word. Here, way is not a typology, but it's a way of thinking. So in that context, it is a vision of the future. It's environmentally friendly. It speaks to a healthier world for us and for our families. So the changes that could come in terms of cleaner air, cleaner water, better stormwater treatment, all those things, and perhaps of innovations that we haven't even thought of, that we would be passing by as we walk on what's currently Lee Highway. So I thought that was a solid choice for the long term. If the corridor is named for a person, then I'd prefer John M. Langston or Dr. Morton. I like the local story. You've heard a lot about John M. Langston. Dr. Morton's appealing to me because he really fought against the status quo in lots of ways, especially when he ran for the county board. And it takes some pushing, especially in a context that's now several decades old, to change the way things are and to keep after it day after day after in the community in which one lives. And I like that story. So in his professional and personal life, he fought the good fight. He finished the course. He kept the faith, and that's a good story to me. And so I'd be happy with either Dr. Morton or John M. Langston. Thanks.
Thank you, Elaine. Minna Kane.
Thank you. Well, first, to echo those who said this before, I really thought this was a wonderful process, and I thank each and every one of you for making this process so collaborative and pleasant, and Matt for making what could have been a pretty unwieldy process seem quite manageable at this point. I'm going to talk maybe in reverse order of my preferences, so that because I did have some thoughts on some of the other choices that I really like. As an overview, I think that we've come up with some really good choices, most of which I would actually be happy with, and which just shows what a great process we had in arriving at this. The Main Street, the only thing about Main Street that I don't like is the fact that I think that people who live along Clarendon, Wilson Boulevard, or Columbia Pike might have a bad reaction to us calling Lee Highway Main Street. And I think we have to be aware of that. It sounds like a very neutral name, but it might end up being the most controversial name if we choose it, and people in South Arlington are upset. I agree with the person who talked about the dogwood maybe not being such a good idea. If the tree is dying, etc., etc. Greenway, I think, is aspirational. It is so aspirational at the moment that, to me, I'd be happy with it, but I'd also be concerned that people wonder, they go down Lee Highway and they say, wow, you named this one Greenway. That to me, it's just, it's a little bit edgy there. James Brown, I loved that story, but I am afraid that people, that again, there'll be the capacity for people to, maybe ridicule is too strong a word, but people will think of the soul singer, and I sort of feel protective of making sure that this name is taken seriously when we announce it. And the reality is that we're a very divided country right now, so we have to be aware of the fact that if there is any option to ridicule the name, there'll be people there who take it, and we have to be careful about that. I loved Dr. Edward Morton and the story of it, how local it is, and the fact that it taught me a lot about Arlington history. And as I said before, I very much hope that even if we don't use it for this, that we either use it for another road in Arlington, or that we do something that keeps it alive. So that was actually my very close second choice. John M. Langston, for the reasons that have been said before, I also think is a great name, and it's a statewide relevant name, so that's also good. And of course, Ella Baker. I loved Ella Baker as well. I think that would also be a great name. I also came to like the name Justice. At first, I was a little bit, I wasn't sure, but now I think that would be a good one. Mildred and Richard Loving. I do hope that we go with that. And, you know, I thank the person who first proposed it. And, you know, as I listened to it, I fell in, for the reasons for it, it just seemed to be right on so many levels. And today, as somebody talked about the Loving Alliance and Loving Local, it just feels additional reasons for loving that name. Loving that name, see what I did there. I do think that we can go with, that we should at least propose Mildred and Richard Loving. I am choosing to see the recommendation that came back to us from the county as them saying, since you ask us what will be easier for us, let us tell you that it would be easier for us if the name is shorter, which is very different from saying we cannot accommodate a longer name. And as I say, after I read that email, you know, what really didn't sit right with me is that Arlington County somehow accommodated for many years Jefferson Davis Highway, you know, across one of our main thoroughfares, and they were able to find enough paint and big enough road signs to do that. So it just, I feel like if they really try, they can do the same thing with Mildred and Richard Loving. And as somebody, you know, somebody else came up with very many other very long names in Arlington that I also looked at, and there's several names in Arlington currently that have more than 15 characters. I didn't actually drive to them, but I suspect that they've been able to accommodate them. Yeah, so that's it. And I really, there are 4 or 5 names there that I think that, you know, I'd be happy with. And in fact, 2 or 3 that I really wish that if we don't use them now, we find they get used somewhere else in Arlington County. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go Maya.
So I echo what so many of you have already said, so I'll keep it short. I also love the name Loving. Langston is also in my top, as well as Ella Baker. On the topic of Loving, I'm guessing we'll get to this conversation later, so I'll keep this short as well, but I'm not opposed to keeping the full Mildred and Richard Loving, but I do think that if we do go with that full name, it should just be Loving on the street names, you know, in terms of branding, marketing, businesses. We don't want it to be a mockery, blah, blah, blah. Or perhaps we could go with Lovings, subject to further discussion later on. I think Langston is also a great option. Sandy was talking about how the Lovings case changed United States history, and I think Langston did that as well, becoming the first Black congressman from the state of Virginia. So I think that's a really significant name option. And I love Ella Baker as well. You know, I love having the opportunity to name the street after a woman and a woman of color. And, you know, she gave many contributions to this country in terms of racial equity and all that jazz. So that's it.
All right, Ginger.
Hi, good evening. Well, the bottom of the list. I think everyone has been very eloquent in their descriptions of why and their justifications for why we should choose certain names. As the executive director of LHA, I am hoping though that the finalists will have diversity of types. It will allow the county board some flexibility in their negotiations, and I'm hoping at least one of the recommendations is not a person. First, I would strongly associate with Sandy's comments about Loving, Mildred and Richard Loving, and I'm confident that it'll be the number 1, and it is my number 1. John M. Langston is second on my list. He was an extremely accomplished man. He had ties to Virginia as a congressman, Arlington, as the general of the Freedmen's Bureau, and to Lee Highway through his namesake elementary school. In addition to Langston, I hope that at least one of the names is connected to Halls Hill. And so my choice for that would be Dr. Morton. I'm also interested in balancing the names, the balance of women on the list. So I would support Ella Baker. Even though she doesn't have ties to Arlington, her story is very compelling. In terms of the final category, I would support Greenway, because I am very interested in a green corridor, but I definitely hear Menez that it is a very aspirational term. If Main Street's selected, I do think that we should have the conversation about how other areas of Arlington would feel, and whether we might think about a north-south indicator or something, and just make sure we have that conversation if it ends up in the top 5. And I actually do like justice, so maybe I have 6. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. And apologies, I think we're almost done here, but did I forget anybody? There's, I think, 1 or 2 I probably forgot. So if I haven't called your name, please speak up.
Hi, this is Diane. And first of all, I want to thank you, Matt, and the Lee Highway Alliance, all my friends there, and Sandy, for the wonderful group of people you've brought together to do a really serious job of what is very important for the whole county. I am in support of everyone's comments about the Lovings, mostly because for me, it provides a teaching moment. Yes, more has been accomplished, but it's how you deal with adversity and how strong Mildred Loving was, that she went to the courts and defended themselves and won. My second choice would be Ella Baker. And it's because of her activism and all that she's taught us by her own civil rights and human rights career. Justice, John Langston, and if we had to have just the name of a street, Main Street, but I also think that almost trivializes what we're doing. Main Street could be anywhere, a small town or a big city. And I also think that the county or counties along Route 29 would be interested in the Lovings as something to adopt. It's not too local, but it certainly carries a lot of information and learning experience. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Did I forget anybody else? All right, I don't believe so. So thank you everyone for your comments. I thought what everyone said was very eloquent, and I think we're finishing up a very good process, and I'm confident that the names we choose are going to be great names for the future of the corridor. So I appreciate all your time and your thoughts on this. So Maya, you want to pull up the presentation again?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I don't think you've taken your 2 minutes.
Well, as the chairman, I kind of see my role as being a facilitator, so I'm not going to say what I like or don't like, maybe a cop-out. I will say that my sentiments are consistent with the sentiments of many people on the board or on the working group. So, all right, I'm going to send the ballot right now, and then once I'm done doing that, Maya, please pull up the presentation. All right, so I just sent the ballot. Many of you, or some of you, had the test ballot go into your spam, so check your spam and make sure it didn't go there again. Maya, you want to pull up the slides?
We don't have anything on the slides until our voting is complete.
Okay. All right, so just a quick preliminary comments on the voting. So again, rank all 10 names. It was mentioned in the email today that the threshold for a name moving on in any given round is 20%. And what that means in the first round, if a name gets more than 5 votes, it will move on. And we recognize there's a chance, maybe not a significant chance, that there will be a tie for first place. If that happens, we have a backup ballot where we can vote on the final top 2 names and decide it that way. But I have a feeling that won't happen. So hopefully we won't have to do the backup. But you should have all received the ballot now. So if you have any quick questions, let me know. Otherwise, I suggest we take until 8:05 to finish voting. And then we'll go with the results.
Matt, I just saw Trey, your email about Trey. I will send it.
Oh, he's actually on right now. So we're joined by Trey Gordner, who is on the board of Fair Vote, and he's an expert in RCV. He really helped me put together this ballot with Mike Cantwell. So if we have any questions about the results and how they came to be, he'll be a great person to talk to. So thanks, Trey, for being here.
Matthew, this is Sandra. Where do I find this ballot?
So it should have been emailed to you like it was, like a test ballot was a couple days
in the
ago.
regular email.
Yep.
Thank you.
So you should have gone to all the same email address you got the ballot a couple days ago.
I've already finished the voting.
Yeah, and if people don't receive it, maybe check your junk email in case it gets stuck somewhere.
I suggest that we take is 15 minutes enough time, do we think, for people to vote?
Too much.
Too much?
I've already voted.
Yeah, you're done. All right, let's aim to be done by 8, and I'll see where we are at 8 o'clock.
Done. Shouldn't take that long.
Okay, Lanston, Morton, Ella Baker. Justice Greenway.
And just a reminder to mute your microphone, otherwise we will hear all your votes.
Sorry.
So Ginger, did you send the, did you launch it or did Matt?
I did.
Matt.
So of all the people, Matt, I'm having some problems. Did you send it to my MT Cantwell or another email address of mine?
It won't come through. It won't come through from Matt's email. It should be from an OPA voting link. Will be the from address.
Yeah.
It comes from working group on Lee Highway.
Mine did not come from working group on Lee Highway. It came from Opta something. OPA vote. Search your junk.
Oh, okay. I figured it out. I got it.
Yeah, OPA vote.
Junk.
I got it.
We're down to one more ballot. All right, everyone is done voting and I have the results. So do you want to wait till next week? Schedule a meeting does next Wednesday sound good?
No.
We don't have a meeting next week.
Okay, I will share the results with everybody in just a second. All right, sent that to everybody. And so
how are you sharing it, Matt? You said you'll share it?
yeah, so I just sent an email. I published the results, so you should get the email.
Sure.
With an astounding 84% of the vote in the first round, Mildred and Richard Loving is the preferred name. It wasn't even close. Round 2, John M. Langston, in second place. Round 3, there were no candidates surplus votes, so candidates will be eliminated. No one got chosen there, but
Yeah, I think we're gonna just keep going. I think we need to.
yeah. All right, so we get down to round 6 because there's a whole bunch of rounds where they're trying to get to the 20% threshold.
Ugh.
And round 6, Greenway is the third choice after breaking a tie with Dogwood. All right, so then in fourth place, Ella Baker. In fifth place, we have Edward Morton.
Results don't show that.
Yeah, no, I'm reviewing this again. Hold on.
My 6th round shows that Greenway is very low.
Oh, Greenway was chosen between Dogwood to be eliminated by tiebreaker. I'm sorry.
You want to phone a friend and get Trey in here?
Yeah.
Matt,
Maybe
what were the
friends.
first 3?
Wait,
Well, maybe
you've
Trey
got
can
'em
help
all.
us.
Yeah.
Can you read them again, Matt?
Wait.
Wait, hold on. Let me share my screen here.
Let's do that.
Yes.
I do want to make a slight correction. Matt gave me a promotion earlier. I'm on the board of Fair Vote Virginia, not Fair Vote, the national organization. So
Congratulations on your promotion.
Congratulations. Thanks for clarifying.
Maya or Ginger, you have to give me the authority to share the screen.
Maya, can you do that?
To be honest, I'm not sure. How do I do that?
you should have a little arrow beside share screen. Do you see that?
So Trey, I sent you the link too, so you can click on that
great.
and see the results.
Yeah. I'm also, I moonlight as Zoom troubleshooting as well.
The Zoom function should say it's like multiple participants.
Yeah.
You just
Okay,
open it
Matt,
up.
try again.
All right, let's see here.
Maybe you can share it directly.
Oh, I got it. Never mind. Here we go. All right.
Did you get the link too? Did you get it? All right, it's on the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So I think we're all clear on round one that the Lovings won. So Mildred and Richard Loving is the number one vote, number one choice by far.
So because they won by such a large margin, what actually happens is that the votes are reassigned to second choices. And so that's what you see happening here when all of the other bars are filling in. Now that the first choice has been elected, for people who that was their first choice, we're going to look at their second choices to keep electing. So there were enough second choices that John M. Langston was elected in this round. You can see that it's passing the threshold in the middle. Okay, so now at this point, there's not another winner in this round. Nobody makes it quite to 20%. So what's going to happen from here is that we're going to start eliminating the really small bars, right? The candidates who have too few to ever win. And then those votes are going to go to those people's next choices. And because there are a couple of small ones, that should happen for a couple of rounds. So you can keep scrolling.
No.
Yep.
Is Ella Baker next?
Nope.
So here's the first elimination. This is John Glenn going to Justice. And then we'll keep moving. No one elected yet. Okay, Greenway is eliminated, goes towards Main Street. No one elected yet. Dogwood eliminated, and now Ella Baker has passed the threshold and is also elected.
Right.
So Ella Baker's third place.
Yes, so Ella Baker is third. And as we keep going, there's a little bit extra on Ella Baker, so that gets reassigned to people who are left. And then in this, what should be the last round next, let's see if I'm right. Yeah. So in the last round, Justice is eliminated. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. So those last two, by being sort of last choices standing, are 4th and 5th.
And that is
Main Street.
That's Main Street and Edward Morton.
Correct.
And Edward Morton is in 4th and Main Street is in 5th, correct?
Right.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, anyone have any questions for Trey about RCV and how this all worked?
I just have one quick comment that, looking back at the charge from the county board is 1 top choice and then 2 to 4 alternate. So I'm not sure we need to rank the 2 to 4. I think we just give them that bucket. Is that your understanding, Matt?
I think it's up to the working group. Is the will of the working group to rank 2 through 5, or to have like Mike's suggestion, which is first choice Mildred and Richard Loving, and here are 4 alternative names. I'm pretty agnostic about it.
The whole point of doing the ranking was to rank.
Right.
If we were going to do that, then yeah, I think we should continue with the ranking.
I agree.
I think we have more information, so we should give them more information.
I agree.
I agree. No.
I agree.
Agreed. I agree.
Okay, well, that's our 5 names. Good work, everybody, on, I think, completing, as far as I know, the first ranked choice vote election for a non-political office. It's certainly the first ranked choice voting election for renaming a road. I can say that with near certainty. So I want to thank again Trey and Mike Cantwell in particular for helping me think through this and setting up the ballot and doing this in an intelligible way that we can all understand. So thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but you all were emailed the results, so you can look at this at your leisure in greater detail.
Thanks, Trey. Great job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll leave my email in the chat if any of you, you go back and you look at the link later and you have a follow-up question, feel free to email me.
How long would the link stay live? If I look at it in a week's time, is it still here? Do I need to look at it by tomorrow?
Yeah, it shouldn't go away magically. Yep.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think, Maya, we can share the screen. All right. So again, here are the top 5: Mildred and Richard Loving, John M. Langston, Ella Baker, Dr. Edward T. Morton, and Main Street. And the next thing we have to tackle is what is the road typology for each of these names? You were all sent a link to the USPS website, which links the various streets that are used in the United States. So the world is kind of your oyster here based on guidance from the county. So with that said, I think the guidance we had from the working group the last meeting was not to necessarily be limited to Avenue, Boulevard, and Street. But with that said, I'd like to open it up and hear what you all think is the appropriate road typology for the first choice, Mildred and Richard Loving.
Jim Todd, your hand was up right away.
I said it in the chat already. I just want to I want to suggest that we call it Mildred and Richard Loving Way or Loving Way, because the same way that loving has a double meaning as not only identifying this wonderful couple that and this wonderful case that means so much for our country, way also I think has a double meaning, in that we have the Arlington Way. And just on its own, you can tell people, how did you come here? I came here the loving way. And I think it has a lot of branding opportunities. It's fun, it's short, and I think given that we're trying to pile a lot of letters into a street sign, at least some of us are, a nice short designation helps limit concerns.
Anika?
I want to agree with Jim on way. My concern was that we would not have something that's finite, or that feels. I don't know enough about typology. Like I'm not a typologist or something, but street feels like really defined, and boulevard in some way, where avenue and way for sure feels a distance without being parkway or which feels longer. And we're talking about we're wanting to this way, if that's what we decide, to stretch across, so that we're promoting way as much as we're promoting Mildred and Richard Loving, to encourage the other jurisdictions to be bought in.
Ginger?
I'd like to advocate for Avenue. I think that Loving Avenue is a lovely name. It is brandable. Arts on the Avenue. The Lehigh Highway Alliance would change to the Loving Avenue Alliance. I'm not so keen on Loving Way Alliance. I do think we need to be taken. We need to make sure that we are a urban planning economic development organization, and that that there are lots of shops and commercial businesses on possibly Loving Avenue. I would advocate for Avenue.
This is Richard. I would like to second that and agree with what Ginger said about, I just think Loving Way, I think it's really cute. It's like my cute idea I put in the chat, which was we should name Old Dominion Drive Old Lovers Lane. That was a joke, everybody. But no, I think Loving Way is just, it's too cute. Loving Avenue, I think, to me, it's very serious. I really would, I'd love to see Lehigh Highway Alliance being named the Loving Avenue Alliance. I think would be great.
Yeah, this is a.
I second that too.
I second it as well.
Sandy, second.
Yeah.
Diane, your hand was up.
I heard 2 seconds.
I second that too. Yes, I like Avenue.
Can I make a
Diane,
comment?
I saw Diane's hand up.
She's gone.
No, I'm here.
Mike.
You're on mute, Diane.
You just muted yourself.
Yeah, I was unmuted before, but I agree with Avenue. I also like Boulevard, but Avenue is great.
Okay, now Mike.
I like Way for the same reasons Anika and Jim Todd mentioned. I think it just sounds good and it has a double meaning.
It's not
Mike Hogan.
To me, Loving Way sounds a little bit too cute, and I think we have an opportunity using another word here to convey additional meaning. So, you know, I like Loving Parkway. It incorporates the word park, which is what we were trying to get after about greening the corridor. But also Plaza, Avenue, Boulevard, and Street and Way are not the only choices here. So, you know, you can call it a plaza, a promenade, a parkway, whatever. So I think, you know, we should think seriously about what the next word is. Avenue is, to me, fairly mundane, and Way is a little bit cute.
I'd like to also advocate for Avenue. And then Minna, I'll call on you next. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. But for all the reasons Ginger said, but I also think that as we're choosing a typology, we also have to think about the opposition of highway. We're trying to get away from sort of the parkway, highway, busy road sort of vibe. And with Avenue, while you could also have Arts on the Avenue, like Ginger said, you could do Shop the Avenue, you know. So I would advocate for Minna.
I like Avenue, and you know, the more I hear the reasons for Avenue, I like it. The one thing that I wanted to add was that to not dismiss Boulevard, and mostly one, when Arlington County were talking about how they look at how long the street name is, Boulevard would just be BLVD on the street sign. So it's not actually a long word on the street signs. It's actually as short as road, you know, because that's all that's all it will be on the street sign. And then in terms of the geography right now of Arlington, you have Clarendon, Wilson, Washington, and the boulevards sort of tend to run east to west, and Lee Highway is doing the same thing. So in terms of just the overview of how Arlington looks, I think that it would make sense if it's also a boulevard, because then it would echo Arlington Boulevard, Washington Boulevard, Wilson Boulevard, Clarendon Boulevard. So to me, that would have been the reason to choose that. And then the roads that are called drive tend to go north and west. So it would sort of show that we're trying to somehow incorporate this into the existing road system in Arlington. Having said that, I would be happy with Mildred and Richard Loving Avenue. Again, it would be AVE, so it would not be the whole avenue. I do love Way, but I agree that it is right there. It is heartwarming, but it is, I think it's too close again to just, you know, being dismissed as a little bit too cute for my comfort level.
Right.
Matt?
Anyone else? Anyone else?
Anika has her hand
Anika
up.
has her hand up.
Yeah, I honestly wasn't thinking about the cuteness of it when I thought Way, because I'm still trying to see how do we think of ourselves as connecting? How do we make the case of connection with the other jurisdictions and back to what I think Maya mistakenly said the other week, Lovings. I don't know if we want to think about that or we're over that because we're going for the whole name. Sorry if I'm going backwards. But I do just want to be careful of thinking about a connection. And they're like Plaza and Promenade. Those are really place-based. So I'm just, concerned about that. Are there other ones that we haven't named that are not as on the beaten path? Wow,
I was going to ask that same question. If there are other names that we've been got. I mean, I personally don't have. I think Way is great, but I also agree that I think it lends itself to being more cutesy. But I do like Avenue, and I like Boulevard too. But are there other things that we're just not thinking about that we need to bring up before we move on?
So we have Old Dominion Drive. We've talked about Drive. I understand the concept of trying to have some continuity in terms of directional, but we also have Columbia Pike that runs in the same direction. So that's the same with Boulevard. And from the I just worry that sometimes we have this opportunity to be kind of creative and original. So when you think of things like Arts on the Avenue, that's great. But Arts on Loving Way is not bad, or Loving the Arts is not bad. There are ways that we can be creative and still sort of get those the same issues. I'm respect and I'm sensitive to the concerns about, is it business enough to sort of drive development? But I just worry that we have this opportunity. We're doing such a cool thing, right? We're recommending a name that's such a change and is making such a strong statement to sort of fit it into. It just seems like a missed opportunity if we don't try to be more creative. Way may be too cute. Drive, Pike. I'm not sure that's my favorite. Boulevard just seems so impersonal. Avenue at least maybe has a little something to it, but Boulevard seems so impersonal.
Matt?
Yep. Yes.
Hi, this is Sandy. I have to go, but I just wanted to say I've already put in a pitch for Loving Avenue, and I'd like to say that for Langston as well. But if the name became Ella Baker, I think the alliteration of Baker Boulevard would be great. So thank you very much. Good night.
Night.
Night, Sandy.
Thanks, Sandy. All right, well, I think we've kind of laid out a pretty broad selection of typology choices. So I'm going to recommend, keeping an eye on the clock, that we go ahead and vote in the chat with the typology you want.
Can I add one thing, because people have kind of dumped on Way a little bit. When we talk about the Arlington Way, nobody thinks that's cute. So, and then I also just want to point out that
it's not a street.
I understand, but that's the other reason that that word has more meanings. And I just curious, can anyone tell me another major thoroughfare in Arlington that's called an avenue? Because as far as I know, in Arlington, avenue is only used once they've used up the words street and road, and they have to call it like 21st Avenue North.
I don't know.
Avenue is more of a DC thing. All the Broke Angles are named Avenue, and that's every state has one. You guys know the map, the font map. I feel like Avenue or Boulevard are fine with me if it's one or the other. I think those are fairly subtle. I kind of like Avenue better, quite frankly. And if that's a little bit, and it feels more DC, then that's fine. I don't think that's a big deal. I actually dislike Drive. And I think that Drive should be, I would recommend taking that off the list, because I feel like we should think about this in a way that, doesn't necessarily privilege the idea of driving a car, because we're trying to get farther away from a highway, which in my mind is a place where you just go really quickly to try to get out of it, So I feel like of this list, everything is pretty good. Pike is actually really interesting, especially with Columbia Pike, in mind. But I would say drop Drive completely, and Avenue and Boulevard are safe bets, and Street and Pike should definitely get discussed in more detail, because those are really interesting thoughts.
In answer to the question, somebody asked about whether...
I think it's good that it's unique.
Sorry, Paul. I was saying, in answer to the question about whether Avenue is used in any other major road, I had looked at a list of all the street names in Arlington, and you're right that currently Avenue is only used for very small streets, once in a while, I think, incidentally. So to me, that's an advantage, because then it would make it really stand out. It would be the one major thoroughfare in Arlington that's called Avenue, which I think would make it stand out in a good way.
Well, and coming from New York, I'll tell you that we love our avenues. Avenue is a grand place in some states. So it's just a change. It's something different.
Exactly.
Sorry, just to be clear, when we're voting, are we voting on just Mildred and Richard and the last name, or are we voting on, yes, right?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
so
you.
we're just voting on Mildred and Richard Loving. We'll go to the others after we're done here. And I see some people have been voting. I recommend you vote for one and not say first, second, third. because while we did use ranked choice for the name, I don't think we need to do it here. So I suggest everyone, we've had a very fulsome discussion, a thorough discussion. Go ahead and please vote.
And Matt, I can't vote in the chat, but I sent you a message with my vote.
So thank you. And Sandy said Avenue, right?
Yes.
All right, anyone else need to vote? I'm seeing a strong support for Avenue in the chat.
So, excuse me, this is Lynn. So I see that folks are voting also for other names. So should we do the same?
Yeah, hold off on voting for other names right now, please. We're just trying to wrap up Lovings. So I think quite clearly it's Mildred and Richard Loving Avenue. So thank you everyone for your feedback. That is the preferred name.
Great.
All right, second name, John M. Langston. So going off of the discussion we just had about the various typologies for the Lovings, what do we all think the appropriate typology is for Langston?
So I just have a question. I mean, it's fine that we're doing this, but we're matching the name to the typology, not so much the typology to the area. If that feels like what we're doing.
Yes.
Sounds good. What's brandable? To me, John Langston sounds like a boulevard.
I agree. This is Sandra.
I agree too. This is Lynn. I'm sorry.
I'm good
with Boulevard.
Either.
Langston definitely sounds like a boulevard. That's like Langston Boulevard. That's a strong name.
I agree.
So can I ask this too, in terms of the typology? There's there was something I saw on the list in terms of the type of street. Like there's vegetation on both sides. I mean, are there restrictions in terms of picking the type of street? Like it has to have a median, and a boulevard has a median.
Not in
that was one of the questions
not in
we
Arlington.
asked the county staff and VDOT, and they said no. Basically,
okay,
it's more common in certain types of roads to really match certain types of landscaping or design or whatever, but there's no legal requirement or state mandated design guidance for these types of typologies. So it's really, our choice here. And I think keep in mind, ultimately the county is going to weigh in at the end of the day what it should be, but I think it's important that we tell them what we think it should be. So I'm seeing a strong support in the chat for Boulevard. So I think this one is going to be John M. Langston Boulevard.
Good.
All right. Next one, Ella Baker.
Boulevard.
I second that.
It has a ring.
You can choose one, so it doesn't matter if we replicate street.
No.
typology.
I like the alliteration of Baker Boulevard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I see a clear preference to Boulevard, so I think we're going to go with Ella Baker Boulevard. All right. Next one, Dr. Edward T. Morton.
How about Avenue? Morton.
I like Avenue too. I like Avenue.
Avenue sounds good. It's
Yeah.
not motorway. Morton Motorway, although it might be tempting. I don't want it.
All right, I'm saying I think universal, a universal vote for Avenue. So Dr. Edward T. Morton Avenue.
So Matt, is this where I get to make my case for Main Street Street?
Sure.
Like it's Main Street Way. Main Street Way.
I think that we should consider, I do think we need
Holy
to.
stole that from me. I was going to say that.
Sorry, Jim.
So I do think that
I
we
feel
should talk about
vindicated.
Menace Point, about whether folks from different corridors will be upset, and then it might backfire if we have just Main Street, whether we should keep it as it is or whether we should be adding a north to it, or would that, what's that?
So
I
Ginger,
personally
wouldn't
agree
it
that.
automatically be Main Street North?
I don't
Because
know.
It's all in the north?
I don't know.
I think we should add a
It
north
would.
to
I
it.
live on 24th Street North.
It wouldn't automatically be north because it runs east-west. They only call it north or south if the street itself runs north to south. That's why
I
Lee
think it's
Highway
the
is
other
not
way
Lee
around,
Highway.
Minnie. I think
Oh,
that
sorry, yeah. But so Lee Highway, for example, is not North Lee Highway, it's just Lee
Right.
Highway because it runs east to west, right? So that's why it's not. Mhm.
But I do think that we should have a conversation whether our recommendation should include north and whether we think that is a good thing or a bad thing.
Anika,
I like Main Street as Main Street. I don't think it requires anything else. I think any smoothing of the feathers can happen later.
Anika has her hand up.
I mean, it's been voted, so, you know, it's ranked number 5, so we should include it unless we're only including 4. And no, I'm curious, I'm concerned that if we use, I'm thinking about the other jurisdictions when I think about the typology. And so I don't know that North Main Street works through the other jurisdictions.
Lauren?
I know that, and I might be in the minority here, but I think that I personally don't think it should be on the list. I think it's kind of a slap to our face to our neighbors in the South, and I think if we are charged to give 2 names and 2 alternatives, we've done that without having to ruffle any feathers, personally. But if we're going to keep it on the list, then I think there might need to be some kind of adjustment, maybe north. I don't know.
I second everything Lauren just said.
Absolutely. Does it really need to be on the list? And I think maybe we can all agree it doesn't.
Elaine?
And I'll also point out just you know, piece of information. You know, the vote analysis, if I remember correctly, I'd look at it again. I'm pretty sure Main Street was the 5th name because we had to have 5 winners. It didn't get to the 20% threshold in the final round. It was just the 2nd most votes of the names remaining in the last round. So.
And with that knowledge, I even more second my own statement.
Yeah, well, I will third Lauren's statement that she just seconded for herself. I think that having it on is more than neutral because people are going to know that we recommended it, and I think even knowing that we recommended it may well ruffle some feathers.
Elaine had her hand.
Sorry.
Thanks, Mai. I'm concerned about Main Street being on the list of 5, but so be it. I would be really, really concerned if anyone wanted to add north in some way. I just feel like we have a responsibility to not exacerbate any divisions in Arlington County that already might exist. And naming things in that way with a north or a south tends to do that, or it tends to make people think in that vein. So I would really be concerned, seriously concerned, if someone wanted to add a north here. I don't see that we need to take a chance on any sensitivities that are already there and magnifying them in any kind of way. Thanks.
I'm mistaken in my recollection somewhere that everything north of 50 was north and everything south of 50 was south.
Lehigh
That's
was
a,
not North
that's a
Right.
post office
it's-
designation.
It's been referred to as North Lee Highway on several things that I've seen related
It
to
doesn't-
county requests. So I don't know that it's
Doesn't-
ever used, but
Doesn't
I've been
really.
asked that before.
Yeah.
Mike Cantwell.
Yeah, I think this should have been brought up earlier if this was that we were going to change the name from Main Street to North Main Street.
Mhm.
I think we did already have the vote. I think it's on the list. I think I'm trusting that the county board will have a full vetting and discussion. And I personally don't think it's really offensive. So I would really like to keep all 5 on here the way they are.
And I'll also point out, just as devil's advocate, I'm a lawyer, so I have to do it. If we take Main Street off, all the names we're recommending are named after people. And I know we've considered so many names after concepts or places and flora, fauna, and we'd have to be comfortable if we do that we're only recommending names after people.
Well, I don't think anybody was recommending taking Main Street off after we had already had the vote. There were some concerns expressed, which are totally,
Oh, no, plenty of people were
reasonable
suggesting in the
concerns.
chat that
Yeah.
we remove
Some
Main
people
Street.
did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I would suggest
We've
we
had the
leave it
vote.
on. It's not going to be the choice, right? It's the 5th alternate. So, let's just leave it on and see what they do with it. I don't think it needs a typology as Main Street. So
I agree.
let's go with that.
So
But I
this
have
is-
to jump off. So thank you, Matt, and thanks to everyone. This has been a great process. I've really learned a lot and enjoyed meeting you all. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks,
Good
Mike.
night.
I agree with
Matt?
Elaine. I don't think we should be adding North. I don't want to further exacerbate. I detest the continuation of the north-south divide that exists in Arlington County. I think it's appalling. And I fight every single time I hear things come up where we're trying to favor North Arlington over South Arlington. I don't think it's right. And so to add Main Street North, I think is ridiculous. And I really hope we don't consider doing that. Second, I think we should leave it on the list. It has been voted. We should not be changing that at this point going forward. I think I'm not in favor of it. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't vote for it. I would really hope that there would be a full vetting, a full county board hearing if that were to be chosen, and there could be some opposition to it. But again, we accepted the rules of the game, and this is what we've got. And I think we should move forward with the recommendations in priority order. Thank you.
And I agree with that. And I think we've made the top 5. It is what it is. Your point, Matt, made me nervous because if you're saying that if we cut Main Street and then we all have our names, how that might be perceived, then that means that Main Street could potentially win over these other names when it's last. So that just made me feel some type of way. But I think we should keep everything as it is.
Right.
Do we have the opportunity to provide notes on this so we can note this discussion as it goes to the board? To say that this is our 5th, but many members of the advisory committee expressed concern based on these reasons.
Yeah, no, we have to give a presentation to the county board, and I think based on the discussion we just had, it's important to add a note similar to that.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. That's a very important.
Are we adding a note about our rank voting? And I guess that's really important to me. If it didn't meet the threshold of the 20% to even make the cut to be on the list, not that I think we need to take it off, even though I did originally suggest that. I think that maybe it just needs to be noted wherever we're noting these things that it wasn't actually voted on to be the 5th. It just happened to fall in line.
Right. Our charge, if you remember, the charge to this working group was to submit 3 to 5 names, not necessarily 5.
Right, but that 20% wasn't a requirement of the working group. That had to do with the ranked voting format, didn't it?
Yes.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so I don't think the fact that the bottom 2 were under 20% makes a difference in what we send to the county board. They asked for 3 to 5. We're giving them the top 5. and they're in order. I don't think that matters. That was something that had to do with the structure of the voting system that we used, not with what we were charged with from the board.
That's fair, Wilma. Thank you. That's
Mrs.
a fair
Wilma,
point.
I agree with that, except that we did vote to choose this ranked system. We voted for that.
Right, right. I also, just to add to what Anika is saying, I also felt a tinge of nervousness that if it is the only choice that is not name of a person, it would be pretty bad if we ended up getting the county to choose Main Street by default, because they had some discussion that we were, that took everybody by surprise about how we don't want to name it after a person. Then we end up with a choice that some of us are actually not happy with. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but it's not only that we're not happy with it, but a choice that some of us feel is less than neutral, a choice that might have the other jurisdictions in Arlington be upset with us. So maybe the answer is to just make sure that in the summary that we give the county that, we somehow make it clear that the top four, were qualitatively different for us than this last one. And I like the comment. I think Jeff has made that comment very many times, that we don't want this to be a wasted opportunity. And in a way, I feel that if this is a chance to right a historical wrong or to do something that is very meaningful, I want to avoid us having done all of this work and then to end up with something that some of us don't feel did what we wanted to do.
Right.
I think that's a really good point. And so Matt brought up the point. The question is this working group comfortable with presenting only names? And I think that we should also evaluate it from the perspective that we're replacing a name with a new name. So there's no reason to say that it shouldn't be a new name because it was a name. I mean, theoretically, I'm comfortable saying that, yes, 3 or 4 names. And I think maybe it's 4 names. Keep Dr. Morton on there. I would love that list. And I would personally be comfortable with having just names is my thought.
I'd like to have a vote before we make a final decision, so we know what everyone thinks and not just those who are speaking for or against in the chat or out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd also just like to point out that for me, Main Street is a particularly odd name because there are long stretches of Lee Highway that I think by post office address go for blocks and blocks where there is not a single business or residence on as it sort of goes through the canyon either side of 66. And so I think that's really weird that is our Main Street that doesn't even have an opportunity for residents or commercial business to be there. So I really, really dislike Main Street. I ranked it last on the list of 10, below Dogwood.
Unfortunately, we've already lost some of our members, so I don't know about taking a vote.
This is Sandra. I don't particularly like Main Street, but I'm wondering during the session with the county board, when this whole thing is presented, if there's not an opportunity there, because they'll probably be asking questions. And might there be an opportunity there for the presenter to express what we really feel about this?
Yes, there will be, and I think we have plenty of time to make it abundantly clear to the county board before they take any action on this, that Main Street was by far the 5th choice, and that Mildred and Richard Loving is by far the number 1 choice, and make it as clear as day that the reason Main Street's on there is because we decided to choose 5 names.
I think that might take care of it. I mean, there is that opportunity when you're right before the board to do what we need to do and say what we need to say.
And I'm being interviewed by several news media outlets before then, so I will do my best.
Well, there you go.
All right, so do we want to take a vote on this, or do we feel comfortable that if we keep Main Street on the list, that in the intervening months, we can all make it as clear as day to the county board that the first 4 choices are strongly preferred over Main Street?
I move we vote to remove it.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, so all those in favor of removing Main Street from the list, write yes in the chat. If you oppose removing Main Street from the list, write no.
Whoops. Matt,
I just
why
want to
don't
mention
you
that
either write remove or leave, because the double negative might get us confused.
Yeah.
I'd just like to mention that Grace Shea, before she left, said to keep it. I'm fairly certain Mike Hogan's did, and I would guess Sandy would vote to keep it.
Sorry.
Can we get an accurate count? I know sometimes we do a sweeping majority.
Okay. Maya, can you help me here? Go through with the vote.
I can, except it will show up on my screen so long as that is okay for me to broadcast the chat to everyone watching.
We can all see the chat anyway, so I think. Oh, sorry, Maya, I see what you mean. Yeah, okay.
1, 2. So I counted 13 either yeses or removes. 14 now.
And Matt, I sent my vote direct.
Okay. Well, I think if we have at least 14 to remove it, then we have to remove it. Because right now we only have 22 panelists.
And I think, Ginger, you said the county said to give 3 to 5 names. So we give 4 names at it. That is still okay, right?
Yes, that's correct. My only hesitation is that it's at the very end of this thing, and everybody's here to.
I'm concerned about
partake
that
of
too.
this.
I agree.
Ginger.
It's a bad process.
Matt, can I offer a suggestion? I would leave it on the list for now. We have an opportunity to talk to the county board. We also have an opportunity among the working group, it may be electronically if needed. But as I recall, there was a tie between something and Main Street, and the tie was just broken arbitrarily. I don't recall what that other thing was.
Oh, what was the other one?
Well, anyway, what I'm just saying is everybody's tired. Some people are gone. Can you just give a day or so to offer some options that don't include take Main Street off or leave Main Street on? That's not a fully formed response right now, when we really may want some electronic back and forth among the working group, to be sure. But we agreed on a process, and at this point in time, both in the process and at night, leave the results alone. If you need to come back to it tomorrow, fine, we can do that. I don't recall what the other thing was besides Main Street, but it was done by a flip of a coin, you know?
I agree, and we just finished a very divisive general election, and people try to change, the rules of the voting. So I think we should have done this before the voting, and no one made a clear case on how Main Street was offensive before the vote. So I really strongly think we should leave it on there for now, and we trust the county board will vet these 5 names.
I would third that with the caveat again of ensuring that we that we represent the discussion accurately. That there was a lengthy discussion about this. There was a lot of concern about the issues for these reasons, but we decided to leave it on the list because we wanted to honor the process. I think as long as we're transparent about that, I support. I think you're right. It just seems. It seems wrong to pull out to reverse the process at this point.
So we're just ignoring the vote?
We
had
just
the
had-
vote. Well, we already had a vote. We're not even
We had
on the
a
vote.
vote.
We did have the vote.
But we just had a second vote, and
But without everybody engaged, without a full discussion, and it just seems like we're rewriting the rules halfway down the river.
But I think we do have a majority here, number one. I mean, I could be open for us doing, it doesn't have to be the rank thing, but it's obviously it doesn't work. But a Survey Monkey or whatever you want to do to get everyone's vote on whether or not to remove it. But I wanted Matt to clarify, I assume Trey is gone. Is that true that we arbitrarily took Main Street because it was equal to something else? I thought that it was actually fifth.
So I'll have to look at the results that we had and were emailed out to everyone. I don't have it in front of me because we're sharing the screen.
No,
Matt.
Morton and Main Street. Morton was fourth. Main Street was fifth. But the issue was that they were both under the 20%. That was the issue.
So it was
in
not
the,
that it was.
sort. In the
But
sort.
Main Street was the fifth.
Right. Because
We got it, but there was something, I think, in the sort between Main Street and something else. Is that right or not?
No, that's not correct. Main Street was clearly fifth.
Yeah. It was not tied with something else.
No, it was no
So-
tie.
Look at, sorry,
What was sixth?
Greenway and Dogwood were tied in round 6 when they were trying to figure out which to eliminate, and they ended up eliminating Greenway by tie. So Main Street was not part of that.
Okay,
hey,
that's
Matt,
helpful.
Matt,
Thank
I've
you.
got the results here. So what happened was in round 8, the name of essentially round 9, Justice, which was the 6th choice, was eliminated. The votes from Justice were reallocated equally to Edward Morton, which then had a total of 20.3, and therefore the 4th choice, and Main Street, which had 19.7 and was the 5th choice. So Justice was then the 6th choice.
But it did not
No,
have.
no one made a case before the vote about why Main Street is offensive. No one made that case. So it would have been nice. if
I
someone
don't think
made
it's a
case
question
on
I
why
did,
Main
Mike.
Street was offensive.
Yeah, actually, Mike, Minna did, and I.
Yeah, I did, Mike.
True.
I talked about it, and this wasn't the first time it was raised either. I think in previous meetings, because I don't think that I was the only one who thought of it. I remember somebody else saying it, and my thinking, I agree with that. But definitely before the vote today, when I said I'm going to start in reverse order, one of the things I said is that I had concerns about Main Street.
If I can, I think some of this is mixed into our subcommittee group because I remember distinctly when Beacon was on there, we talked about, and the example was made because that was the sort of figurative sort of work that Rosalind did, but nothing was sort of named Beacon in that sense of a street. But how would it look to other villages, urban villages or the nodes or whatever they are called, to name a street Beacon? How are we suggesting that it's a beacon over others? And I think when we were having that conversation, Main Street came up in that too. So, but that was in our subcommittee, and I think everybody wouldn't have necessarily been a part of that. However, we did give a report back as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's probably correct. Then it first came up in the subcommittees, but before I raised it today.
Can we just leave this shit alone?
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I
okay
think we set up a process, we set up a ballot, we did the votes, and I think we all hear loud and clear that Main Street is not anywhere near the top other 4, even though it came close to Morton at the end of the day. And I think it would look really bad if we end the process. Literally, the last thing we do is to vote to remove a name we voted for.
100% agree.
I agree.
And I think
agree.
we all are
Let's leave it
effective
as it is.
advocates.
I
We
agree.
all are effective advocates who have relationships with board members, and we have friends who have relationships with board members. And I think if we make it abundantly clear that what our preferences were and give them the context of this discussion, they'll get it. So I think it would look worse to take the name off the list when I think there's a very, very good chance it's not going to be the final name chosen anyway. So
The
that's
chairman has spoken.
Leave
All
it.
right.
Leave it.
All right.
Let's leave it so we can go and sleep.
Okay. Well, I think we have one more slide to give you, just to wrap
Oh,
up, and
Oh.
one more finally, and it requires no decisions or voting. So it's just to give you a little more information. All right, next slide, Maya. All right, so the results of tonight's meeting will be presented to the LHA board tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. The board will then forward the recommendations to the county board. I will present the recommendations to the county board on the 15th, and the county board will either try to change the name through the Health Transportation Board or through the General Assembly. So we've done our part. I'm very proud of everything we've done, and at this point, we're going to pass it on to the board, and hopefully, in the near future, we'll have a new name for Lee Highway officially.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Here, happy holiday.
Thank you. Happy
Bye-bye.
holidays. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Take good
Bye, y'all.